The City of Austin Employees Retirement Systems Retiree Seminar. During today's virtual seminar, we will provide helpful information about how to protect yourself against fraud and scams and tips for safeguarding your financial wellness. Today's discussion will be led by Lisa Schifferly, Senior Policy Analyst in the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau's Office for Older Americans.
Let me start by telling you a little bit about the CFPB's Office for Older Americans. If you're not familiar with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, we're about a 10 to 15-year-old federal government agency that's designed to make sure that banks and lenders treat you fairly. Next slide, please. And in the Office for Older Americans, where I work, we work specifically on issues affecting adults who are 62 and older, and working with financial caregivers as well who might be caring for someone who's older, or anybody who works in the field of aging and elder law. So what we do is we try to help protect older consumers from financial harm and help people make good financial decisions as they grow older. You can find all the materials that I'll talk about today at consumerfinance.gov/older-americans and can learn more about our office there as well. So let me set the stage first by talking a little bit about fraud and financial exploitation broadly. You'll see on this slide some statistics about elder financial exploitation. Some estimates say that older Americans lost at least $2.9 billion to financial exploitation. That's back in 2010. But many people believe the true cost is even higher than that. If you look at other studies, you've got $6 billion as an estimate. If you look at suspicious activity reports, you'll see that the average amount lost was $34,200, which is a lot of money for an individual to lose. And in 7% of those, the loss was more than $100,000. Now, a lot of research shows that elder financial exploitation is really underreported. So this is really just the tip of the iceberg. And if you look at the Federal Trade Commission's Consumer Sentinel data, you can see that fraud and scams continue to grow up until 2023 and into 2024. On the next slide, you'll see some information about why are retirees attractive targets for scammers. Now, anyone can be scammed regardless of age, regardless of gender, regardless of socioeconomic status or race. It can happen to anyone, but it may be that some older adults have retirement savings, pension income, Social Security, or home equity that scammers would like to tap into. And it's likely they may have some type of steady income coming in, even if it's just Social Security, whereas a young person may not have a job or doesn't have any money saved up for a scammer to target. Now, on the next slide, you'll see some scams, and I'm going to give you a few examples of scams because all the research shows that if you're able to know and recognize a specific scam, you're far less likely to lose money to them. So I'm just going to talk about a bunch of scams up front, and then I'm going to focus in on 4 scams that really are related to retirement savings issues. So first on this slide, you'll see the whole variety of telephone scams. I'm sure we all get calls that are scam calls almost daily, sadly. At this point, you get the IRS imposter saying you owe back taxes. Sometimes you get someone pretending to be your bank. Sometimes you get someone pretending to be a loved one. There also are home contractor scams. This can happen after a natural disaster, or it could be someone just walking up your driveway and saying, hey, I see your roof needs work. I'm working on your neighbor's roof and I'll fix it for you. And then oftentimes they'll disappear with your money without finishing the work or do a shoddy job. Or sometimes, as we'll talk about later, they'll even secretly take out equity from your home in the contract they provide to you. There's also investment fraud and scams. So this can be something as simple as a free lunch seminar with high pressure sales tactics, or it can be a sophisticated romance scam where they take a lot of time over time to build up a relationship with you and then ask you to invest in cryptocurrency. They'll say that they are training you on how to invest in cryptocurrency so you can become rich like them. But really what they're doing is they are teaching you how to send money to their crypto wallet. So it's a complete scam. There's also the lottery and sweepstakes scams. This is a very prevalent one affecting older adults. It's in the top 5 for older adults. And it's up there for people of all ages. So this is when they tell you that you've won a lottery or a prize, but all you have to do to claim it is pay some upfront fees, or maybe it's taxes or customs, and then you can get a prize. So really, you should never have to pay an upfront fee or any sort of customs or taxes before getting your prize. That's how you know it's a scam, if they're asking you to pay in order to receive your winnings. Now, the next slide has some additional scams that I want to point out. There's the grandparent scam, or this can be a family emergency scam. It doesn't have to be a grandchild. It could be a niece or nephew or child, or sometimes they're even impersonating mothers or fathers or grandparents. But the typical scenario is they call and they say, "Grandma, I'm stuck in another country. I just got in a car accident. I need you to wire money right away. Don't tell mom or dad." Or they'll say, "Grandpa, I just got put in jail and I need bail money." And sometimes they'll even follow up. The scammers will have somebody else call and pretend to be the sheriff's office to make it more believable. So that's the grandparent scam, is people pretending to be the grandparent and asking you for money, and they force you and play on your emotions so that you think you need to send money, and they tell you not to talk to anyone else. But really, what we advise people to do is to call the grandchild or text them and see if they're okay, because a lot of times they may just be sitting in math class perfectly fine and not actually overseas in a car accident or some other terrible thing. Another type of scam we see are the tax scams. This is where someone calls, and these are sophisticated criminals who have call centers often overseas, and they're making thousands or millions of these calls saying, "This is the IRS, you owe back taxes, we're going to throw you in jail if you don't pay up." Or sometimes they say they'll deport you, or they'll take away your driver's license. But basically, they're trying to get you into a state of fear or urgency, and so that you will send them money. But some things to know is the IRS is not going to take payment over the phone by credit card. And they're not going to call you to say you owe back taxes. You'll get something in the mail first with a PIN and information. If anyone calls you, you should call back the IRS or go to irs.gov, not give any information on the phone. That's true of any incoming call. That's one of the biggest tips that people can take away, is if you get a call coming in, even if the caller ID says, "Oh, it's the IRS," or "Oh, it's your grandchild," you cannot trust that caller ID, because it can be spoofed to look like a number that it's not. And that's a scammer trying to trick people again. So never give personal information or financial information. If somebody calls you, always hang up, call back in a number you know to be correct, not the number the person on the phone's giving you, because that'll just go back to them in the scam call center. So never give out financial information on an incoming call. So we also have fake charity scams on here. This can happen where scammers try to pretend to be like a charity that you know, maybe the Knights of Columbus, but then they'll twist the name slightly, or they'll say breast cancer awareness, but they'll twist the name slightly from a legitimate charity to one they've made up, and then get you to donate money there. So you can actually go to charity.org or the BBB's, Better Business Bureau's Wise Giving Alliance, to check out a charity before you give any money, to make sure it's legit, and also to make sure that the money is actually going to the people who you're trying to give it to, and not just to overhead costs of the charity. So those are a whole variety of scams that you may see, or you may know somebody who gets involved in and sends money to a scammer in one of these scams. But now I want to turn and focus on 4 different fraud issues related to your retirement savings in particular. And so I'm going to cover investment fraud, and then protecting your pension, and then identity theft, and then protecting home equity. So let's start with investment fraud. Now, this is something where scammers can use your trust or inexperience, or they can also steal money from very sophisticated consumers and investors. They may present themselves as a very experienced professional when in fact they're just trying to get you to invest your savings in something that's not a good fit for you, or in something that sends them money. And increasingly, we're seeing these investment scams involving cryptocurrency. So that's something to look out for as well. Now on the next slide, you'll see some of the red flags that we see with investment fraud. This is how you can recognize a fraudulent type of investment opportunity. Often, like with a lot of scams, there's that sense of urgency. They're trying to make you feel like you have to act now or have to act before the deal goes away, before it's too late. Sometimes they'll promise a guaranteed high return on investment or guaranteed low interest rate. They might say, oh, don't worry about it. I'll take care of everything. Just leave it all to me. Just give me the money and don't worry about anything else. That's a big red flag as well. Also, if they refuse to tell you how they get paid, or if they ask you to put all your money in one type of investment, if you think of that old adage, don't put all your eggs in one basket. If somebody is telling you to put all your money in one type of investment, it's probably not a good investment advisor. So what are some of the safeguards to protect against investment scams? The right side of the slide shows some of those. And a big one is that you can actually interview the broker or the advisor. You can ask questions like, can I file a complaint if I have a problem? Or how do you get paid? You can also check the background of a broker or investment advisor at finra.org, FINRA.org. So that's a really great way to do your research before you choose somebody to help you with an investment. And also, as I said, be very wary of somebody who builds up a relationship with you and then tells you they're going to teach you how to invest in cryptocurrency, because that's one of the new scams that a lot of these investment scams involve a romance scam where they'll build up a supposed relationship over time, or a wrong number scam where they'll text you and say, oh, I'm sorry, it's wrong number. Then they'll try to build up a relationship with you. And then they'll say they're teaching you to invest in crypto, but they just take your money. So that's another investment scam to look out for. Now let's go on to pension advance scams. So often a scammer will offer a cash advance, or what we call a lump sum buyout. And we actually have a whole consumer advisory on this topic on our website that I'll show you at the end, where you can get more information. But first, let me tell you some of the red flags and safeguards related to pension advance scams. So some red flags on the next slide are the company says they want to arrange it so that monthly payments are automatically deposited into a new account, and then maybe they'll be debited to pay back the loan and fees and the interest charges. So they come after you when you maybe need some extra money, and they'll say, here, I'm going to give you an advance on your pension. But then they do it with poor terms, or they might not disclose their fees or their interest rates or other terms on the loan. That's another big red flag. So it's very important when being approached by someone or considering a financial decision to take your time and do your research, and don't let them rush you, and also not to give access or control over your monthly pension payments. So if you are looking at a pension advance because you're struggling financially, which has been happening to a lot of people, especially it was during the pandemic, but it's a good idea to get some financial coaching or counseling from a professional to make sure you're making informed decisions before you do any sort of pension advance. If you are having problem with your pension, you can actually go to pensionhelp.org, which you'll see on the right side of the screen. And there's also a toll-free number there where you can get free legal assistance related to your pension. And it sounds like your organization may have some resources for you as well in terms of issues with your pension. But do be very wary if somebody is saying they will give you an advance on your pension, and check out very carefully the terms of the loan or agreement before you do. Another big issue in terms of guarding your retirement income and security is protecting your Social Security benefits, and that can be protecting them from identity theft in particular, and also protecting all your money really from identity theft. But we do see people taking your Social Security number, which then they can use to open all sorts of accounts in their new name, in their name or in a made-up name, using your Social Security number, and they can steal your Social Security benefits at the same time. So what do we mean when we talk about identity theft? It's like when somebody tries to steal your personal information and use it for their own good. And these are some red flags of identity theft. If you notice you're not getting your statements or other financial mail, it could mean that your mail is going to someone else or is being intercepted by an identity thief. So it's important to follow up on that to make sure it's not going to a scammer's address. You also might see a change to your account information. Nowadays, we do often get a text or an email or some other type of alert from our financial institution if there's a change to the account. But it's important to look at your accounts or your statements frequently in order to make sure nothing has been changed without your knowledge. Also, think about if your Social Security benefits are not being deposited properly into your account. That's a big red flag that they might be going somewhere else. So some safeguards for identity theft. It's really a good idea to review your credit report at least annually. And now after the pandemic, you can review it even more often than that for free. You can get free copies at annualcreditreport.com. And that's a good way to check if anybody has changed your personal information, opened new accounts in your name, or done other things that you might not be aware of. Also really important to destroy any financial mail once you no longer need it, and to shred it using a cross shredder. And check your bank accounts and credit card bills each month for anything fishy as well. And it is really important to contact a financial institution right away once you are suspicious of something or think information may be being misused, because you want to make sure, first of all, that if you need to have any accounts closed or reopened, like a credit card reissued with a different number, different expiration, or different CCV, that you can do that. And there also are some legal requirements in terms of how soon you notify the lender and whether you'll be liable or not, or how soon you notify the financial institution. So let's turn next to protecting home equity. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this can include home loan scams. It can include some of the home contractor scams that we talked about. So if you already own a home, sometimes scammers might ask you to take out a loan to pay for home improvements or to purchase other products. So it could be a home equity line of credit, it could be a reverse mortgage. Those can be very legitimate and good products for some people, but they might not be a good fit for others, or they might be misused by a scammer. So it's very important to look at those types of contracts very carefully. We actually have several resources on reverse mortgages on the CFPB's website at consumerfinance.gov/reverse mortgage if you're considering a reverse mortgage. Also important with these home contractor scams, I saw this several times when I was a legal services attorney, where contractors would come by and say, oh, I'll get you a special senior discount for new windows on your home. Just sign this contract. And then what the person was really signing was actually taking equity out of their home to pay for the windows, and they didn't realize that. And sadly, that came to me once as a case where the house was going to foreclosure, because once that loan became due, she couldn't pay it because she didn't even know that's what she had done or signed. So these can be very pernicious, ugly scams. So let's look on the next slide at some of the red flags for home loan scams. Again, there's that sense of pressure and urgency that's similar for a lot of different types of scams. Someone might be pressuring you to take out a loan or requiring you to pay something in advance, or the person who's doing work on your house is saying they'll provide financing. That's a big red flag, as if the financing is coming from the contractor too. So what are some safeguards, especially when you're talking about home contractors? It's good to avoid contractors who go door to door, especially if they're not providing proper information or identification. You can get references from prior customers. It's good to get at least 3 estimates and not pay with cash if you're having home work done. That's a good way to try to avoid some of these home contractor scams, which can then result in home loan or home equity stripping scams. And we'll talk more at the end about some resources related to homes and home equity. But first, I want to talk a little bit about protecting your funds while buying a home, because a lot of seniors may buy a new home to downsize, or maybe take out a new refinance a home in order to age in place. So if you are buying a home or refinancing, there's some scams to watch out for in terms of mortgage closing scams. And this involves a scammer posing as someone that you should be able to trust. They might pose as your real estate agent or the settlement agent, and they're trying to pretend to be legitimate, but they're sending last minute instructions to wire your money somewhere else. They just say, within 24 hours of closing, they'll say, oh, we had a change, send your money here instead. And it looks like it's coming from your real estate agent or your settlement agent, so it looks real. And so a lot of people understandably end up sending that money. And usually if you're buying a house, that's your whole life savings for most people, or a big chunk of the money you have. So this can be a really devastating scam. So on the next slide, you'll see some of the red flags and safeguards for these types of scams. So it can be a red flag if someone calls you and asks you to verify your personal financial information, or to send your financial information by email, which is not a secure way to send financial information. And real estate agents and settlement attorneys should have secure portals, not be sending that information by email. Sometimes you might get a link or attachment that you don't realize or recognize, or that your realtor didn't tell you to expect. So these scammers they're doing what's called business email compromise. So they take over the real estate professional's business email, and it looks like it's coming from them, and they're sending you these messages looking like it's coming from your real estate professional. So it's really important to, if you get anything with a last minute change to wiring instruction, call both your broker, your real estate agent, and your settlement attorney to verify whether it's correct before sending any money. And the CFPB also has a mortgage closing checklist that you can use to help you go through all the steps you need when you're going to closing. And if you do send money, thinking that it is your real estate agent or settlement attorney, it's really critical to contact your bank or the wire transfer company immediately and ask for a recall, because reporting the error as soon as possible can increase the likelihood that you'll be able to recover the money. You can also file a complaint with the FBI at ic3.gov. That's the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center. And they have what they call as a kill chain that can help you stop the money if you report quickly. It's very hard to get money back from scammers, sadly, but the sooner you report, the better your chances are. Now, on the next slide, I just want to emphasize again that, detection and quick response is crucial. It can be really hard to get your money back, but contacting your financial institution, wire transfer company, or if you sent money by gift card, that's another red flag of scams. Oftentimes scammers will ask you to get iTunes or Apple or other type of gift card and send them money or read them the numbers off the back. And then, so contact whatever payment method you sent money to the scammer by, and ask them, tell them that it was fraud, and ask them to get the money back, and it's important to do that as soon as possible. You can also report scams to the Federal Trade Commission at ftc.gov/complaint, or it's also now called reportfraud.ftc.gov. So now, before I take your questions, I want to share some CFPB resources that may be helpful to you and to others in your community in preventing fraud and scams. The first is this Money Smart for Older Adults curriculum. This is an awareness program that we've developed in collaboration with the FDIC, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, and it helps people identify fraud and scams. It covers a whole bunch of the scams that we've covered today, as well as a lot more. It has an instructor guide, and then it has a resource guide too, and it's available in English and in Spanish. So if you know somebody who would rather get this information in Spanish, we have it there. We also have PowerPoint. So if you're someone who goes out in your community and gives presentations on scams and scam awareness, you can use the PowerPoints from Money Smart for Older Adults to do that. They're fully scripted. And then you can order these guides all for free at consumerfinance.gov/order, and you can hand them out. On the next slide, you'll see our managing someone else's money guides. We talked a lot about fraud from strangers. Sadly, sometimes it's also financial caregivers or loved ones who take somebody's money. So this is our guide of materials about choosing a financial caregiver. We have guides for people who are serving as agents under power of attorney, for those who are serving as guardians, for trustees, and for government fiduciaries like Social Security, rep payees, or VA fiduciaries. So if you find yourself in one of these positions for a loved one, these guides can help you understand what your rights and responsibilities are, and also how to protect the individual from fraud and scams. In addition, on the next slide, you'll see our Considering a Financial Caregiver Know Your Options piece. This is a good one for people who are earlier in the caregiving process. It's designed for maybe you're just starting to notice that a loved one needs help managing their finances, or maybe you're planning ahead yourself for your own financial future when you may become unable to manage your own finances. This goes over informal caregiving options like convenience accounts, or adding a trusted contact person to your account. These are a trusted contact person is just somebody who doesn't have any access to your money, but the financial institution will notify them if they see signs of fraud or exploitation. And then it also covers the more formal caregiving options that we have all those guides about that you saw on the previous slide. Tells you more about what does it mean to have a power of attorney or a guardian or a trustee. And finally, it gives you a list of questions to help you consider who's the best person to choose as your financial caregiver. A lot of people default to the oldest child, but that's not always the best option, or people may not have children. So this gives you options and questions to think about, is this the right person? Is this someone who I trust, who will be organized and manage my finances in the way that I want them to, rather than what they want to do? Because that can be a good way. Choosing the right financial caregiver is another huge step in fraud prevention. Now, on the next slide, we also have several guides to help you make informed decisions. Like I said, we have a lot of topics covered. We have reverse mortgages. We have one on financial advisors. We have one on the pension lump sum buyouts that I was discussing earlier. So you can find these all at consumerfinance.gov/older-americans, and all of it is for free. So please do check it out and use those resources. We also have some brand new housing decision guides that we're really excited about. These are specifically designed for older adults who may be faced with life decisions about the equity in their home when certain life changes happen, like the loss of a spouse or a partner, or changes in health, or maybe thinking about how to leave your home to your heirs, and then how to use home equity to meet your needs without getting into a home equity stripping scam. So we have 4 different guides on each of those issues. And on the next slide, you'll see how to report fraud and identity theft. I mentioned this before, but reportfraud.ftc.gov is a place to report scams. And if you're a victim of identity theft, you can report that at identitytheft.gov. That's the federal government's one-stop shop for identity theft victims, where you can report identity theft and you get a personalized recovery plan that walks you through all the steps you need to take for your particular type of identity theft. It'll tell you about if you need to place a fraud alert or a credit freeze, or ways to clear up the identity theft with Social Security if it's Social Security related, or with your medical providers if it's medical provider. And if it's IRS identity theft, you actually can directly file with the IRS through identitytheft.gov. So it's a very powerful tool. Now, on the next slide, you'll see about submitting a complaint to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, where I work. Like I said from the start, we're designed to make sure that banks and lenders treat you fairly. So we take complaints basically related to banks and lenders. This slide has some examples of some of the issues that might come up that you could file a complaint with us at consumerfinance.gov/complaint. It can be related to loans like student loans or payday loans or auto loans. It can be related to mortgage loans, credit cards, credit reporting. If something's not coming off your credit report due to identity theft or otherwise, and you've disputed it, you can file a complaint with us. And what we do is we send the complaint to the financial institution and tell them about the issue. And generally within 15 days, we hear back from the financial institution about what resolution they're going to give the consumers. So it can be very helpful to have that extra support of filing complaint with the CFPB if you've already contacted the financial institution and they have not given you the relief that you believe is proper and appropriate. So again, that's consumerfinance.gov/complaint, where you can file a complaint. And finally, on the last slide, I want to leave you with some of our contact information in the Office for Older Americans. You can find all the resources I mentioned at consumerfinance.gov/older Americans, and you can reach out to us at olderameriCans@cfpb.gov or at lisa.schifferly@cfpb.gov to reach me directly. You can also join our mailing list if you go to consumerfinance.gov/older Americans and get alerts about blog posts, network news, and other updates. So I hope you will check that out, and I hope you will share what you learned today with others in your community to help them prevent fraud and scams. And with that, I am happy to take any questions we have.